disability history is beginning to get into the mainstream, which is what we need. And that really came out inspired by two things: the Olympics and a project that we were talking about in Disability History Month last year, Changing Times, Changing Lives, which was a project that was done in Leeds with students to try and, based on Sonali Shah's work of looking at the lives of disabled people born in 1940, 1960 and 1980, and then bringing that into schools to make installations and drama of it. And that is available on the Leeds website and is a really good resource. And the second thing that it was inspired by was the upsurge in support for disabled people in 2012 around the Olympics, and particularly Paralympics, but against the backdrop of continuing perhaps the most sustained cutbacks on disabled people at any time in our lives, and certainly for several generations. So we have a very mixed picture of history of disabled people today. And what we're going to do today is various speakers are going to look at various aspects of that in the modern history, really. But we have on your chairs our broadsheet that we've produced for this year, which goes back right to the 11th century. And I think it's important to get the broad sweep because there have been in the last year several programs and projects, some of which are referenced on the press release, which you've also got there, which have begun to explore that 1,000 years of history. So for instance, it's now pretty clear that in the medieval period, most disabled people were just accepted as part of the community. And particularly up until the Reformation, when the places where people who had more needs had their needs met in monasteries and nunneries and churches, those were all broken down. And we saw this transition from Christian principles of charity to the state taking over and the introduction of the first poor laws, and it became at that point that there was a pointing of fingers: you're not really disabled. Now if you read The Sun, you will see this every week. You're not really disabled. Call the Sun hotline to shop someone who's a benefit swindler. And so by taking this long view, we wanted to show that there isn't really that much difference in these attitudes, although we think we live in much more enlightened times. Anyway.